We're here on Daf Lamed Daled Amud Aleph, about a third of the way down through the Amud, and we've more or less passed the point of the Seder Avodas Hamikdash of every day, and now the Gemara is going back to the Ketores of every day, which, as you remember, they brought the Ketores on a daily basis the whole year round, both in the morning and Bein Harbayim in the afternoon. And now the Gemara reprints the Mishnah. So you'll see the first word in the line is Ketores, about, shall I say, 13 lines. I'm just guessing down from the top of the Amud here on Lamed Daled. Ketores shel Shakar Hoisa Kreva Bein Dam Le'evarim. And we had a Gemara way back when that recorded a machlokes between the Chachamim and Abba Shol about the Seder Avoda of the Shachar of the morning in the Beis Hamikdash. And what the Gemara is about to embark upon is an analysis of our Mishnah here in the third parak of Yoma to see if this Mishnah is reflective of the Shita of the Chachamim or the Shita of Abba Shol. So as we go through this Gemara, we're going to write out a list of the sequence according to the Chachamim and according to Abba Shol. And we'll be able to compare those two lists. And then we'll take a look in our Mishnah and see which of those two lists are reflected by our Mishnah. Does our Mishnah reflect the sheet of Chachamim or the sheet of Abba Shol? Okay. Mani. Gemara asks, who is the Tana of our Mishnah? Because in our Mishnah, it's clearly indicated that the Avodah Ketores in the Chakras was done in the middle, Bein Dam Le'evarim. What does that mean, Bein Dam Le'evarim? That's a quote from our Mishnah. Here on Daf Lamed Gimel Amud Aleph, it means between the Zrikas Dam HaTamid and the Akrovas Evarim of the Tamid. Normally, you would have anticipated that immediately following the Zrikas Hadam, take the Emurim, take those Evarim that have to be burnt on this Beach, and be maktir them. But no, we're going to wedge in between the Avodas Hazrika and the Avodas Haktoras HaEvarim, the Ketores of Shachar. So now the sequence in our Mishnah, we're going to try to see if this reflects Chachamim or Abba Shol, is A, B, C. A is the Zrikas Dam HaTamid, B is the Haktoras HaKtores, and C is the Haktoras HaEvarim Shel HaTamid. And in fact, we'll have a discussion about where they place the Evarim in anticipation of the Haktorah, because there was a delay during which they were maktir the Ketores Shel Shachar. Rabbanon, if our Mishnah reflects the Shita of the Chachamim, then here's the Seder Avoda of the Chachamim. Number one, Zrikas Hadam, Dam HaTamid. Number two, we're not ready for the Hakrovas Emurim, Haivarim. We're not even ready for the Haktoras Haktoras. What we're ready for is Haktovas Chamesh Neros. Now, you may recall that we discussed yesterday, the day before yesterday, great length, that the Hatovas Haneros is going to be split into two parts with a wedge in between of Haktoras Haktoras. So what we have is Hatovas Chamesh Neros, and before we're ready for the Hatovas Shtei Neros, we will be maktir the Ketores. So now we have a problem if we want to reconcile the Chachamim with our Mishnah. Because our Mishnah has Haktoras Haktoras wedged between the Zrikas Hadam HaTamid and the haktoras avarim of the dam hatomid. What happened with hatovas haneros? Meaning, our Mishnah has A, B, C. A, dam hatomid. B, haktoras shel shachar. C, haktoras ha'evarim shel hatomid. Where the Chachamim have A, B, C, D, and E. They start with the dam hatomid. Then from there, they go into hatovas chamesh neros. That's B. Then they interrupt the hatovas chamesh neros, and they have hakrovas ha'evarim. They evarim of the tongue. And then, let me go over this one more time. So we started with Trikas Adam. I should really write this on the wall. Now we have a whiteboard, right? I start with Trikas Adam. I go on to Hatovas Chamesh Eros. Oh, and then, this is what I left out. It's Haktoras. Then we have Hatovas Shtein Eros. And then finally, number 5 on the list is Hakrovas Evarim of the Talmud. And the Mishnah seems to completely cut out the Hatovas Haneros. It goes straight from the Ktores to the Haktorah, the crave of the Dam Haivarim. Where is that Hatovas Haneros here? In fact, the Haktoras is sandwiched between the first 5 Neros and the last 2 Neros. Whereas our Mishnah has Haktoras sandwiched between the Dam HaTomid and the Evarim of the Tomid. How do we reconcile this? And the Gemara now writes, so to speak, rewrites the Mishnah in the way that it would have reflected the sheet of the Chacham. Bein Dam Leneros mi boil. The Haktores is in truth after the Zrikas Adam HaTomid, but not immediately afterwards. We're going to delay the Haktoras until we start the process of Hatovas Haneros. So therefore, the Haktoras according to Chachamim should have been between the Dam and the Neros, because that's where the Haktoras is. It's not after the Dam and immediately before the Evarim. It's not Dam, Ktores, and Evarim. It's Dam, then Hatovas Haneros, then we have the Ktoros, and then we finish the Neros, and then we bring the Evarim on the Mizbeach. So therefore, we have no choice but to introduce Abed Shol. That doesn't work out either. The Gemara of the Abed Shol, according to Abed Shol, the Seder of Avodas HaShachar is we start with Hatovas Chamesh Neros before the Zrikas Adam. And that means that we do Hatova on 5 Neros. Then we do Zrikas Dam HaTomid. And then we do Hatova on the last 2 Neros. And then we mark to the Ktores. And at the end of this whole rigmarole, only then are we makriv the Evarim of the Talmud. It's therefore the Gemara says if the Mishnah would have reflected the sheet of Abishol, then it should have said in the Mishnah, Bein Neros le'Evarim mi boile. In other words, if you're ready for the Hakaras Haivarim, that's after you were made to the last 2 Neros, completing the process of Hatovas Haneros. It turns out that our Mishnah does not reflect either of these 2 sheets, neither the Chachamim nor Abishol. Now, the Gemara has a vested interest, almost like an agenda, to reconcile our Mishnah with the Chacham. That's a general migama, that's a tendency throughout Shas. We always want to go like the Rabbim against a single dissenting view, a minority view. Li'olam Rabbanan. Halacha Kiraman. So the Mishnah should reflect the Shita of the Rabban. You have a kasha that the Mishnah completely cut out Hatovas Haneros. The answer is Ubesidra Loka Mayri. These are the three key words here to understand this Gemara. Ubesidra Loka Mayri, 4 words. And literally translated, it means that our Mishnah is not giving us the Seder. Our Mishnah has a different subject. In the translation here, he writes that true, the Aktores will come between the Dam and the Neros, not between the Dam and the Evarim. Right? The Aktores is going to be sandwiched between the 5 Neros and the 2 Neros. But lo pirid atanis seder amaduyik shall call avodas el nokat rak es hamakomos shel haktores. What the Mishnah is interested in is to determine where every avodah was done. It's not giving you the exact, precise sequence. Lo pirid atanis seder amaduyik shall call avodas. Seder is not the agenda, is not the subject matter of our Mishnah. The Mishnah is interested in Makoma, for example, in the case of Ketores. Where does Ketores fit in? In the Seder Avodah of the Korban Tamid. So basically, the subject of our Mishnah is, once we have the Avodah Satamid, which is comprised of 2 major parts. Number 1, we have the Dam, and number 2, we have the Evarim. Where does the Ketores fit in? Within the context of Avodas HaTamid. The answer is the Ketores is wedged in between the Dam and the Evarim. We're not going through the entire Seder. Hatovas Haneros now becomes irrelevant. Lefichach, Hiskir Hatana Rak Es Avodas Zrikas Adam Hakrovas Evarim Shayu Lefanel Achrel, meaning they were before and after the Ketores. The Dam was before the Ketores, the Evarim was after the Ketores. Lo Hiskir Hatovas Haneros. Even though, again, Hatovas Haneros was also implemented between the Dam and the Evarim, according to the Chachamim, but that's not the subject of the Mishnah. The Mishnah wants to determine where is the Ketores in the Seder Hayom. The answer is the Ketores is certainly between the Dam and the Evarim. More precisely, it's between the Hatovas Chamesh Neros and Hatovas Shtei Neros. But that's, now you're introducing a foreign element into the subject matter of the Mishnah. The Mishnah is not talking about Hatovas Neros. The Mishnah is focused on the Avodas HaTamid. And where is Ketores in relationship to the Avodas HaTamid? Now let's go on in the Mishnah. The Gemara now quotes the end of the Mishnah. It says, Uktores shel bein arbayim haisa kreva bein evarim linisach. Once again, like we saw in the ratio, where is the Ketores in the sequence? And the answer is between Dam and Evarim. Now the Mishnah goes on to ask, where is the Ketores shel bein arbayim? As far as the Ketores shel Shachar, it's between the Tamid shel Shachar, in between the Dam and the Evarim. But as far as the Ketores shel bein arbayim, where does it fit in? And the Mishnah answers, it's between the Evarim and the Nesach. Before we go on, let's go back to the Mishnah for a moment on Daf Lamed Gimel Amud Aleph, and we will Just 1 second. He says, okay, I don't want to, I realize I don't have it now, so we'll leave it out for the time being. In any event, we have the Ketores of Shachar, which came before the Evarim of the Talmud. With regard to the Ketores Shel Ben Arbayim, the Mishnah says it is after the Evarim. So it means that first we're going to bring the Evarim on the Mizbeach. We're talking about the Talmud Shel Ben Arbayim. And then the Mincha and the Nesachim, and then the Evarim. We have everything. And now we're ready for the Ketores of Ben Arbayim. So the Gemara immediately asks, Minani Mili. Why is it that with regard to the Ketores of Shach, we said that takes place before the Evarim? In the case of the Ketores Shel Ben Arbayim, it comes after the Evarim. But yet, the Mishnah insists that even if it comes after the Evarim, it has to come before the Nesachim and the Menachos. So on the one hand, we see clearly that Ketores gets Kedima. In the Reisha, the Ketores Shel Shachar got Kedima over the Evarim. We don't give it that same status with regard to the Talmud Shel Ben Arbayim, but there is a Kedima in which the Ketores is injected between the Evarim on the one hand and the Nesachim and the Menachos on the other hand, which gives the Ketores a certain element of Kedima, or in a different language, we can formulate it as it gives it an integration into the Avodas HaTamid, not the same level of integration that we had in the Ketores Shel Shachar. There, the integration was mamish between the Dam and the Evarim. Here, we're already finished with the Evarim, but nevertheless, there is a certain element of integration in the Ketores Shel Ben Arbayim, insofar as it comes before the Nesachim and the Menachos. So where is that from? Where do we derive this from? And I think on one level, you could interpret it that the Gemara is bothered by the inferior status, put that in inverted commas, of the Ketores Shel Ben Arbayim. In the Ketores Shel Shachar, we upgraded the Ketores, and we brought the Ketores on the Mizbech even before the Evarim of the Talmud. We really interrupted the sequence of the Talmud for the sake of the Ketores. But in Ketores Shel Ben Arbayim, we completed to some extent the Ikar Avodas HaKarban of the Talmud before we got to the Ketores, and we had not just the Dam but also the Evarim. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Amar Kra. This is in Pashas Pinchas in the context of Musafir, and it says over there. I'll read the whole pasuk in Bamidbar Chavches. The Eis HaKeves Hashini Taseh Ben Arbayim. Now again, when I read this pasuk, I come to the exact opposite conclusion, because the pasuk, when it's talking about Ben Arbayim, the pasuk says which seems to equate the afternoon to the morning, so to speak. But yet, it says Kim Minchas HaBoker with an extra chaf. That chaf is called a chaf hadimya. So it's Kim Mincha or Kim Minchas. And what is it telling us? What is this Kim Minchas teaching us? Now, in the case of Minchas HaBoker, the mincha comes after the Ketores. Correct? Because the Ketores comes even before the Eivarim. How much more so before the mincha? So he says that the Minchas HaBoker is teaching us something about the mincha of the Talmid Shel Ben Arbayim. And that's the Chaf HaDinyon. Ki Minchas HaBoker, meaning Minchas HaBoker is going to be my paradigm, my melamed, to teach me something about the Minchas Ben Arbayim. And in what sense do I make that analogy? Based on the Chaf HaDinyon of Ki Minchas HaBoker. Ma Minchas HaBoker. Torres Kodemis L'Nisachim. In fact, we went even a step further. We said that the Torres is even before the Eivarim, but certainly it's before the Nisachim. It's Afkan here too. In the evening Mincha is Torres Kodemis L'Nisachim. Torres comes before the Nisachim. I'm still not out in the clear over here, Abosai, because as I said at the outset, I feel badly for the Torres Shel Ben Arbayim. It got a bad, what do you call it, a bad rap, whatever the word is in English, the phrase. Because the Torres Shel Shachar comes before Eivarim. It's really integrated into the essence of the Talmud. Whereas the Torres Shel Ben Arbayim, all right, you gave it a booby prize, and it's before the Nesachim, before the Mincha, but it's not before the Haktorah Eivarim. The Gemara says, if you're telling me that the Seder Avodah in the Talmid Shel Ben Arbayim is derived from the Avodah of the Talmid Shel Shachar based on the Chaf HaDinyon, then why don't you go all the way? Mala Halon, just like in the case of the Talmid Shel Shachar, is Ketores Kodemis Le'Eivarim. You upgraded the Ketores to wedge it in the very fundamental primary avoda of the Talmud. It splits the avoda of the Talmud into two: the Dam, then the Ketores, and then the Eivarim. Is Afkan here too in the Talmud Shel Ben Arbayim? In the context of the equation, the analogy derived from Chaf HaDinyon is Ketores Kodemis Le'Eivarim. Why are you giving the Ketores Shel Ben Arbayim a bad rap, and you're punishing it by delaying it until after the Avodas HaTamid, after the Eivarim? You're not willing to upgrade it to wedge between the Dam of the Talmud and the Eivarim of the Talmud. What about the Chaf HaDinyon that equates the Talmud Shel Shachar with the Talmud Shel Ben Arbayim? So the Gemara answers, let's take a clear look at the pasuk. The pasuk says Kiminchas Haboker. Wouldn't it have made more sense if the Torah wanted to place the Ketores Shel Ben Arbayim in the middle of the avoda of the Talmud, namely before the Eivarim? It should have said in the pasuk Evrei Haboker, just like the Evrei Haboker come after the Ketores, so to the Evrei Ben Arbayim of the Talmud Shel Ben Arbayim should come after the Ketores. But instead, what does it say in the pasuk? Miksiv Evrei Haboker. Instead, it says Kiminchas Haboker Ksiv. What is the Torah telling me by saying Kiminchas Haboker? Avoiding Evrei Haboker. The answer is because it's not Evrei Haboker. Evrei Haboker, the Torah comes before the Evrei Haboker. But in the case of the Ketores Shel Ben Arbayim, the Ketores comes after the Evrei Haboker. But rather, Kiminchas Haboker, just like the Ketores in the morning comes before the Mincha that accompanies the Talmud, so too, in the case of the Talmud Shel Ben Arbayim, the Ketores is going to come before the Mincha, but not before the Eivarim. is Minchas HaBoker v'lo Varei Boker. And that's the final maskana of the Gemara. I'll just read to you the commentary here. I mean, it's pretty much everything we said already. He says, "Atomit shel ben arbaim hushva litomit shel shachar legabi minchas hadesach v'lachein kimoshe b'baboker makdim es haktoris lamincha af ben arbaim makdim es haktoris lamincha omnam lo hushvu atomit shel ben arbaim litomit shel shachar legabi evarim v'lachein ktoris shel ben arbaim unlike ktoris shel boker is eno kodemes le'evarim el rak leminchas hadesach." Oops. Okay. Well, might be a little bit. That's okay. Okay. Just give me 1 second to see what I can do here. Okay. Now, I know it's getting late, but at least an introduction to the next brisa, which the Gemara is going to quote here, Tan Rabban on the bottom of Lamed. The Gemara had clarified all these drushos from the pasuk of Kiminchas HaBoker in the Seder of Avodas HaTomid Shel Shachar and the Avoda of Tomid Shel Ben Arbaim. Now the Gemara quotes a brisa from which we're going to darshan the pasuk that comes before this pasuk in the parasha with regard to Nisuch Yayin, because with the Tamid there was an accompaniment not only of the Mincha but also of the Niskei Yayin. And there's machlokas between Rebbe and the Chachamim as to whether or not this pasuk that comes a little bit earlier that addresses Nisuch Yayin, is it a relationship with the Tamid Shel Shachar or with the relationship to the Tamid Shel Ben Arbaim? Tana Rabbana. And we learned in a brisa. It says in the parasha of Tamid, and this again back to Midbar Perek Chav Ches, but now we're going back to Pasuk Zayin. Before we were focused on the later psukim. And it says, "V'niskor v'yis hahid la'keves achad," meaning that the keves of the korban tamid needs nisuch hayayim, niskor v'yis hahid. But it doesn't say in the pasuk explicitly, are we talking about the tamid shel shachar or the tamid shel ben arbaim? The chachamim are of the opinion that the keves with which, vis-a-vis which, the niskei hatamid are described here is the Bein Harbayim. The keves is the end of this pasuk that the parasha of which starts with as hakeves achad haseba bokev as hakeves hashnit as Bein Harbayim, and this pasuk is afterwards, and therefore it's a reference to the Tamid Shel Bein Harbayim, and therefore Yelamed Korban Tamid Shel Shachris Mishal Arvis, that the Tamid Shel Erev requires Nisuch Hayayin, and that's explicit. And from the Tamid Shel Ben Arbaim requiring a Nisuch Hayayin, we're going to derive the conclusion that the Tamid Shel Shachar likewise requires a Niskei Yayin. That's the sheet of the Chacham. And Rebbe on the top of Daf Lamed Daled Amud Beis disagrees with the Chacham. He holds that the keves or echad that's mentioned in this pasuk with regard to the Nisachim is the Tamid Shel Shachar. And since with regard to Tamid Shel Ben Arbaim there's no mention of Niskei Yayin, therefore he derives the conclusion that the Korban Tamid Shel Arvis has to be derived from the Tamid Shel Shachar. And just like the Tamid Shel Shachar requires Nisuch Hayayin, so too the Tamid Shel Erev requires Nisuch Hayayin. But again, Rabbosai, at the end of the day, whether you start with Tamid Shel Shachar and end with Tamid Shel Ben Arbaim, or the other way around, you still come to the very same conclusion that a tamid, whether it's in the morning or in the afternoon, requires niskei yain. So we wonder why the Gemara is bothering with this machlokes, which seems so theoretical and abstract that it doesn't cut ice, as we would say. Lamaisa, at the end of the day, both Rebbe and the Chacham agree that both the Torah Shel Shachar and the Torah Shel Bayim Bayim as well require niskei yain. So B'li Neder tomorrow, or more precisely on Yom Rishon, I have Yartzai for my father, so remind me to dedicate the Shia to my father's memory. We will try to sink our teeth into this machlokes between Rebbe and Chacham as to whether we begin and derive niskei yain from Shachar to Ben Arbayim, or perhaps the other way around. Okay, then, so I wish everyone a great day. Thank you so much.